Hey everyone, it's Kenji. Welcome to my new kitchen. Actually, I might have posted some videos from here already, but this is my new kitchen. This is the first video I'm recording in the new year, so Happy New Year to everyone. I hope 2021 is better than your 2020. Yeah, so let's go. All right, so we're gonna be cooking some pressure cooker chicken Chile Verde. So you can do this in a instant pot. I have this Breville pressure cooker. You could also do it on a stovetop pressure cooker. Anything will work. You do need a pressure cooker for this recipe. If you want to do a version that doesn't require a pressure cooker, you can go to Series Heats and find one that's done in a Dutch oven. The process is a little bit different. This is one of those recipes that's just so sort of stupid easy. Barely any work at all. You just got to prep your vegetables. So I have these chilies. Starting out with these chilies. These are poblano peppers. Got a couple of those guys. You don't have to use poblanos. You could use all Anaheims. You could use hatch chilies. You could use, if you don't want any heat at all, you can use something like a cubanelle or even a green bell pepper. I'm just using a mix of green peppers. So I've got these poblanos here, which are sort of moderately hot. Okay. And I've got these Anaheims. What I'm doing is I'm just splitting them all in half so I can get those seeds and ribs out. I don't want the seeds and ribs in the chili, mainly just sort of for a texture thing. Although the ribs, so this white, the white pith inside here, that's where most of the capsaicin in a chili, where you're gonna have the highest concentration of capsaicin. And then of course some of that also rubs off on the seeds. So the seeds will also have some amount of heat to it. Whereas the flesh of a chili generally doesn't have too much heat, although that can vary from chili to chili. So these are Anaheims that I got here. These chilies have seen better days, but they'll work just fine for this kind of recipe. I'll use one Serrano chili. These are mainly for their heat. Okay. Here we go. Now I'm going to very roughly chop them. Doesn't matter how messy you are about this. It doesn't matter how uniform the pieces are. You just want to very roughly chop them into pieces about that size. Take the insert from a pressure cooker. Dump them in there. Now I'm going to take these. So these are tomatillos. Tomatillos are, they're a nightshade. So in that sense, they're related to tomatoes, but they are very different from just sort of green tomatoes. They're more closely related to things called Cape gooseberries, or if you're Colombian, they would be called uchuva. Or if you've ever had a Chinese lantern plant, these are essentially very, very closely related to those. They have those same sort of husks with a berry inside. Tomatillos. So if you don't have access to fresh tomatillos, and I know some of you probably won't, well, it's difficult to make green chili because it's the main base of this style of green chili, at least. You could use, oh, that one's no good. You could use regular green tomatoes, unripe green tomatoes. Or, if you want, you could just use regular tomatoes. And the dish won't sort of fundamentally break. It'll just sort of taste different. Tomatillos have a very tart flavor to them. And not super aromatic. They don't really taste much like a tomato at all, but they're very tart. And I find them extremely delicious. They're used for this style of chile verde, as well as if you're going to make a salsa verde, like a Mexican style green salsa. Tomatillos are the thing. If you can't find them fresh, you can sometimes find them canned. You can certainly find them online, order them canned, and they'll come sort of packed in water. And then, so if you're going to use canned ones, which you totally can, that guy's not so good either, which you totally can, all you have to do is drain them, and then retain a little bit of the moisture, a little bit of the liquid from the can, maybe half a cup of the liquid from the can, and add it to your pressure cooker. Because as you see, we're going to break sort of one of the fundamental rules of pressure cookers here, which is that we're not going to add as much liquid as we are supposed to. Because we're adding all these sort of fresh vegetables, and then we're also going to add some chicken. And those, as we start to sort of saute them and heat them up, they're going to release enough moisture on their own that the pressure inside the pressure cooker is going to build up even without the addition of much extra liquid at all. So I'm also going to add, this is a giant onion, so I'll probably add half of this onion. You can use a yellow onion, you can use sweet onions, Spanish onions, white onions. I would just avoid using red onions. because of the color issue. But flavor-wise, any onion virtually is going to work. And if you go to Series Eats, by the way, you will find the full written recipe, which I am not following because I very rarely follow the actual recipes. All right, tomato in there. I'm going to add just a few cloves of garlic. So when you're doing garlic, I like to sort of rub off the outer skin like that. Okay, and then you place it kind of like at an angle on your board here, and you just push it until however many things as you want pop off. I'll add 3 of these. Put the rest back here. I'm sorry, by the way, my kitchen is a mess right now because we still don't have all of the storage space that we will eventually have. So the countertop is currently occupied. All right, cut off the root end of the garlic, put your knife over it, give it a whack. That'll loosen up the skin. For a dish like this, you can just chuck it straight in whole, doesn't matter. So very little sort of knife work on this dish other than some very basic rough chopping. Right, let's clean up our board. That's all the vegetables we're going to do. I'm gonna go over to the sink, give them a quick rinse. Tomatillos are sometimes a little bit sticky on the outside. And of course peppers, you want to make sure they get a rinse once you bring them home from the supermarket. So we'll give it a quick rinse. Pour it all out. I'm going to let a little bit of that water, I don't care about like really carefully draining everything out because a little bit of water in there is good. It's going to help generate some steam. All right. And I'm going to actually just get this going on the stovetop a little bit because I want it to start heating up and steaming. Okay. I have to use this clicker because my brand new range, the electronic clicker, there was this huge spark here. Oh, actually you can see there's some burn marks there. There's this huge spark like a month after we moved in here, and the clickers all stopped working, which I have to get fixed. All right, chicken. This is, you can use any kind of chicken. So this is actually just a mix of boneless, skinless pieces. So I've got a few thighs, and a couple breasts. If you want it to stay sort of juicier and more tender, you can use all thighs. Or if you want it to be a little bit leaner, you can use all breasts. It doesn't really matter. You can use skin on pieces. You can use pieces with the bone in. Super forgiving. Really, whatever chicken pieces you have will work in here. You just want them to have sort of enough meat on them that you can sort of shred it later. I find boneless, skinless, I plan on sort of shredding all that chicken, and so I find boneless, skinless to be advantageous in this particular situation. I'm gonna give it a nice big pinch of salt. Okay, and then let's see, the last ingredient is some cumin. Cumin. Grab my old buddy mortar and pestle. So you can use pre-ground cumin. I generally buy and use my spices whole, although not always, not sort of religiously. The reason you want to buy your spices whole is because they'll retain their flavor longer. So once you grind them, you're sort of increasing their surface area. And the more surface area, a little particle of a spice has, the more area it has for its aromas to escape. So if you can smell it, I can smell this cumin. It's really powerful right now. And one sort of cardinal rule of smells is that if you can smell it, it means that it's no longer in the food. So the more easily you smell things, that means the more aroma it's releasing, and the less there's going to be by the time you put it on the table. So if you start with pre-ground cumin, oftentimes that cumin's going to have lost a lot of its aroma already, which is not the end of the world. It just means you typically have to use more. But whole spices will retain their aroma much longer, especially if you store them in airtight containers and keep them in a cool, dark pantry, like that. All right, I've got this chicken stock. This is homemade. You can use store-bought, doesn't really matter. You can even use just water. I'm gonna add just about like maybe half a cup or so. What I'm doing is I'm adding just enough liquid. to really sort of get the steam going. And now, oh, by the way, this particular recipe, I know there are going to be some people out there who are going to be tempted to like sear the chicken or saute the vegetables, sort of build in a little bit more flavor. That's totally fine if you want to do that and you want to get a little more flavor out of it, although I honestly don't think it needs it. But if you do that, the important thing to remember is that you will need to add more liquid because this recipe relies on the moisture released from all these vegetables in order to build up the pressure inside the pressure cooker. And I'll talk to you a little bit about how a pressure cooker works in a second, like how an Instant Pot or a stovetop pressure cooker works. But the reason why you don't have to add much extra liquid in here is because you're using raw meat and vegetables, which have a lot of moisture in them already. That's going to get released as this cooks. All right, so now that I got a little bit of steam going in here, I'm going to transfer this over to my over to the actual electric pressure cooker. I always like to start on the stovetop just because the burner is much faster at heating this stuff up than the electric heating element at the bottom of the pressure cooker is. So the way a pressure cooker works, you're basically sealing everything in. There's a little valve that allows a little bit of air to escape once it hits a certain pressure. It's basically, there's like a weight on top of the valve. And what you're doing is you are building up steam inside this container, which in turn is going to create pressure. And when you increase the pressure, the air pressure pushing down on a pot of food, you are effectively raising the boiling temperature. So the temperature at regular sea level temperatures, 1 atmosphere, say. Boiling is at 100 degrees Celsius or 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh, by the way, 15 minutes, I'm setting it at maximum PSI. So on an electric pressure cooker, that's going to be 12 to 15 PSI or so. On a stovetop pressure cooker, that would be sort of medium pressure because stovetop pressure cookers generally get up to around 15 PSI. But this one gets up to 12 PSI. It'll take about 15 minutes to cook in there. If you cook on high pressure on a stovetop pressure cooker, it'll only take about 10 minutes once it reaches pressure. And so what's going on in here is steam is building up. That's going to cause pressure to build up. And then because there's more pressure pushing down on the food, it takes more energy to then get it to boil, which means that the water in there can actually come above 100 degrees or above 212 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you're at 12 PSI, that's 12 psi added to normal atmospheric pressure, you can raise the boiling point of water by around 40 degrees. So it'll get up to maybe 240, 250 degrees or so in there before it starts to boil. And so what that does is it makes it so that all of the cooking reactions take place faster. So the chicken will cook faster, connective tissue will break down faster, so it'll shred more easily when you get it out. So something that would take an hour on the stovetop will take about 30% of the time here, so 15 to 20 minutes in a pressure cooker. These electric pressure cookers, I think, are great. You've probably, many of you may already have an Instant Pot, essentially the same thing. What they do is they monitor the temperature both at the bottom. Well, this one does it at the top and the bottom so that it gets a really good, accurate reading of what the pressure is in there. So one of the nice things about pressure cookers, electric pressure cookers, is that once they get going and once they're up to pressure, there's actually not really much boiling going on inside. There's a very slow release of bubbles, maybe, but it maintains the temperature such that the food will cook, but it won't sort of get jostled around by bubbles and boiling. So you can cook food quickly and gently. It won't sort of like shred apart the chicken on its own. So you have much more control over how shredded you want that chicken. Pressure cookers are wonderful. And now, you can get one for like 60, 70 bucks online. All right. I'm going to let this come up to pressure. It'll probably take about 5 to 10 minutes for it to come up to pressure. And then after that, the timer is going to go. It'll start cooking for about 15 minutes. And and then I'll be back. So I will see you in just about half an hour. All right. So it's come to pressure. It cooked for 15 minutes. Now I'm going to release the pressure from inside. Flipping up. This is called a quick release. There's also, if you read a recipe that says to do a natural release, what it means is you want to wait for it to cool on its own. So this is a way you can do a quick release. If you have a stovetop pressure cooker, you can also take it over to the sink and run it under cold water. Obviously, that doesn't work with these guys. In the meantime, I'm also cooking these tortillas. these are just store-bought tortillas. I refresh them. The best way I've found to refresh tortillas is to dip them in a little bowl of it. So in here I have water with some fat. In this case it's some rendered duck fat that I just had in the fridge, but you could use oil, you could use lard, whatever you want. So a little bit of water and a little bit of fat. And the water is going to sort of help that corn flour gelatinize, soften up, tenderize, while the duck fat is going to give it a nice, well, any kind of fat is going to give it a nice kind of coating. It's going to keep it a little moister. It's going to prevent it from sticking to the surface. I'm doing it on this baking steel griddle. You can do it in a pan, or non-stick or cast iron or whatever you want, really. But you want to do it with something with like a, don't do it on like stainless steel or aluminum that it'll stick to. But any kind of carbon steel or cast iron or non-stick will work. All right. This is pretty much done. You gonna let me open you? This one has a little locking mechanism here that doesn't let you open it until the pressure has gotten down below a certain point. Are we there yet? There we go. All right, so here's, oh man, does that smell good? All right. Meantime, I'm going to grab out all this chicken. It's going to like kind of fall apart, which is okay. Just try and keep it in as, in fact, it doesn't really matter what you do. This is a super forgiving dish, but what you're trying to do is get just the chicken out so that we can blend the sauce and then return the chicken to it right after. One of the nice things about tomatillos is that they're very high in pectin, higher than a normal tomato is. Very high in pectin, so they make the sauce really nice and thick. In the same way that a gooseberry, a Cape gooseberry, is good for making jams. Tomatillos are good for making a nice, thick, rich sauce. All right, I got most of the chicken out. I'm gonna take my hand blender here. How are you tortillas doing? A little bit too much on those. You don't want to cook them to the point where they get like sort of dry, because then you're looking for pliable. But if you do accidentally overdo them like that, it's okay. Sometimes it's better to let them go too much on one side and not too much on the other side, so you get a lot of nice browning flavor. Stack them up. Wrap them in a towel. I have this tortilla warmer. You don't need it. You could just use a regular kitchen towel. Wrap them up and then let them sit. And the residual heat and steam is going to make them nice and tender and soft and pliable, which is what we're looking for. All right, so I got my hand blender. You can do this in a standing blender or a food processor if that's all you got. Even a food mill if you're going old school by hand. I'm doing modern here. All right. We're just gonna blend it. And done. That's all it takes. All right, chicken could go right back in. I'm gonna grab a spoon here, and I'm gonna kind of shred it up. Now, the ratio of chicken to vegetables I did a lot of vegetables here, and that's because I like having this extra sauce. The sauce that you have extra, you can, when the chicken is all out of here, you can save that sauce and use it as a dip for chips. You can, I'm going to actually probably end up using this to make some kind of enchiladas. I'll probably add some other vegetable to here along with a little bit of the shredded chicken and the sauce, and then I'll make this into enchiladas. But for today, for dinner, we're going to have just this chicken, which is shredding up nicely, some nice tortillas, some chopped cilantro, some onions. We're just basically going to make some tacos out of this, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that right now. If you want to make this into a sort of, the kind of heartier meal that you're going to eat with a bowl and a spoon, You can add like a can of white beans to this, a couple cans of white beans, and that would be delicious, or pinto beans. You could add hominy. And by the way, you're not really restricted to chicken here. I have a recipe for pressure cooker pork chile verde, which is a sort of more traditional approach to this on serious heats as well. I just did it with chicken today because it's what I had. All right. Looking good. Get a little that's leftover lunch soup. Put this into monkey bowl. Yummy. All right. So in the recipe I have, I think at the end I also add a dash of fish sauce to this, which you totally can do. Fish sauce, obviously not a traditional Mexican or even, you know, Southwestern American ingredient, but it will sort of boost the flavor of this without really, oh God, without really making it fishy at all. That's good. All right, cilantro. These are the garnishes. You don't need to pick individual cilantro leaves. You can get all the, you know, fine stems are perfectly edible. I don't know when you would need to pick just individual. Like if you're working for Alex Stupak or something, you might pick individual leaves. But yeah, here, fine stems and leaves, totally fine for cilantro. Give it a rough chop. And then let's do a little bit of diced onion as well. And we're just gonna mix those up. We got a lime. And now we're gonna make a nice little taco. Chicken and sauce. One of the nice things here is you don't need to make a separate salsa because the chicken kind of makes its own sauce. These braised type dishes. Cilantro and onion. A little squeeze of lime. I'm going to use this hot sauce just because I love it and I have it. Karma sauce. They make a bunch of good hot sauces. This one's chocolate and chili flavored. So sort of mole-ish, but in a sort of hot sauce consistency and a hot sauce heat level. Alrighty. Just get a little more chicken in there. Right. I'm not going to go over to my usual window, but I think, you know where I'll go? I'll go over into the dining room, which has a really nice window for pretty light. Look at that. It's gonna be juicy. That is like stupidly good for the amount of work that goes into it. I think the dogs are asleep upstairs, so I'm not feeding the dogs today. But anyhow, thank you for joining my new kitchen. I will see you next time, guys, gals, non-binary pals. Stay safe, wear a mask, and be well. Bye-bye. Hey everyone, it's Kenji. There are 22 million kids in this country that rely on school lunches for nutritious meals. And with schools closed now more than ever, organizations like No Kid Hungry can use their support. So I'm asking you to join me. Click the link in the description below to donate some money. No amount is too small or too big. Thank you very much and stay safe. Bye-bye.